May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. I don't know if you've noticed this yourself, but astrology has become ever more popular. In fact, astrology is more popular now than at any time, and it has been since the 70s. About 30% of Americans in polls are to be believe in astrology, whatever that means. And experts say that many, many more people regularly check out their horoscopes in the paper or in one magazine or another. You can find internet sites dedicated to astrology, Twitter accounts, Instagram accounts. The internet has really helped spread this movement faster than it did before. In the 70s, the kind of stereotypical astrologer was an older woman wearing flowing dresses with kind of crystals hanging from them. But now astrologers are largely young people. They're in their 20s and 30s. And rather than just offering some advice on when or to make decisions or some romantic advice, astrology now can help you figure out what career path is good for you, what sort of business you might want to try and start. It kind of tries to answer the questions that are facing your life. Experts say there are a number of reasons for the rise in popularity of astrology, including the decline, perhaps, of organized religion, people looking elsewhere for answers to life's questions, the rise of economic precariousness, the crisis in 2012, and the changing ways that people make a living now, the decline of kind of full-time employment, more of a gig economy, more part-time jobs, and a willingness to turn to New Age spirituality from other traditions. In addition, then, in the last few years, the general kind of political anxiety in our country has driven people to look for answers, to look for meaning in other places. There are all sorts of kind of fascinating kind of permutations of this. Amazon, I didn't realize this, Amazon was sending out to some of their shoppers shopping horoscopes to help you kind of decide what you needed to buy based on the pattern of the stars. You probably know that astrology is that idea that the patterns in your life, the events in your life, are governed by the movement of the stars and planets, and particularly the position that they had at the moment of your birth. Astrology today tries to explain your purpose, your potential, and help you reach self-actualization. It has become almost psychology in a way, and less fortune telling. It has an ancient history back for thousands of years, right up through modern day 20th century leaders in the United States, including President Theodore Roosevelt. President Reagan famously relied on astrology in trying to make decisions. Now, when I started reading about this week on the internet, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole, I went to an app on my phone to download my own chart, and it didn't really speak to me particularly. I started out kind of thinking with a fair degree of skepticism, almost kind of scoffing and laughing about it. But by the end of the week, and maybe it's just the time in my life, I was more open to the people looking for meaning, and glad that we were able to find it somewhere, even in a system that doesn't really work for me. The wise men that Deacon Shelley just read about from Matthew's Gospel are looking for meaning, and they find some meaning up in the stars. The word that Matthew uses to describe the wise men is the Greek word magi, which can be translated astrologer, can be translated magician, sorcerer. Our Bible translates it wise men. Our tradition, that familiar hymn, turns them into kings. And assigns them a number, although Matthew doesn't say how many of them there are. Our part of the Christian tradition says there were 3, which sounds like a nice Trinitarian Christian number. Other parts of the Christian tradition say there are as many as 12, equaling the number of Jesus' disciples. In any case, however many there were, our tradition, the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow gave them names: Melchior, Caspar, and Balthazar. But none of that is in Matthew's account. What Matthew tells us very clearly is what the wise men are not. The wise men are not members of the nation of Israel. They are foreigners. The wise men are not Jewish. They are not part of the religious establishment in Jerusalem of their day. They are from far away. They are from outside the culture of Jesus' day. They see the star in the heavens and they decide to travel to Jerusalem because they believe that it is a sign that the King of the Jews has been born. And when they get to Jerusalem and start asking where the King of the Jews has been born, the actual King of the Jews, Herod, gets concerned because he has not had a son and wants to know what's going on here. So he has the wise men come and talk to him. He brings his own religious experts in, the priests from the temple, and they kind of compare notes. The wise men know that the star means that the King of the Jews has been born, but they don't know where. The religious leaders of the day know that the King of the Jews is supposed to be born in Bethlehem. And so Herod sort of hedges his bets. He sends the wise men off to Bethlehem to look for the child and ask them to bring him news of the child when they find him. The wise men go on to Bethlehem, they find Jesus and Mary and Joseph, and they present their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Matthew doesn't tell us what those mean, what their symbolic meaning is. We've kind of freighted that meaning on in the familiar hymn, We Three Kings. But they present their gifts, and then they're warned in a dream not to return to Herod, or maybe they just found him a little creepy to begin with, and they decide for whatever reason to go back to their own country by another path. It's a beautiful story. I suspect you love it as I do. It provides sort of a nice bow to the Christmas story, right? It kind of wraps the Christmas season up. It's the end of the 12 days of Christmas. It also says, kind of in a kind of plain, easy to understand way, that God did not speak just to that little community of Jewish Israelites in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. God didn't come to earth in the form of Jesus just to talk to that small group of people, but God came to talk to everybody, people from far away from the community of Jesus' day. I also draw another meaning from this story, and maybe you have meanings you draw from it as well, either from the gifts or from who the wise men were or from some other detail. For me, what this story says is that God calls to us in our own language and in our own world. God calls to us in ways that we can understand individually. God does not just try one way of connecting with us. And so look up at the night sky and look at the stars, and you can find God there. Strike up a conversation with a stranger, someone from another culture. You can find God in that interaction. Spend some time outside in creation and marvel at the beauty of this world we live in. You can find God in nature. Spend time with family and friends. You can find God in the relationships with those we love. Spend time by yourself in quiet, in solitude, and you will find God within yourself. I don't know all the ways you find meaning, you make meaning in your life. I'm glad that you're here, and that part of that is finding meaning in our Christian tradition, in the Bible, in the traditions of the church, and the community gathered here today. But wherever you find meaning, I hope that you will look for the ways that God is reaching out to you, God is speaking to you in your language, in your world, helping you make sense of your life, helping you realize your potential to be children of God, helping you live the life that God has given you.